You ever walk into a courtroom thinking you're in for a basic legal scuffle, only to realize you're walking straight into a chess match, blindfolded? Yeah, that's how it started for Elon Musk. He wasn't in his usual high-profile swagger mode this time. No tweet storms, no press lurking at the doors. This was different. This was quiet. Serious. Strategic. The case? A supposedly minor contract dispute with a tech startup over AI patent licensing. At least, that's how it was painted on the docket. But to Elon, it felt like something else entirely, like bait. And the judge? Oh, Judge Howard Belmore. The man had other ideas. Elon sat silently at the defendant's table, expression unreadable. His legal team, seasoned, stone-faced, and unflinching, were ready to play ball. But what they didn't expect was how the judge would treat Musk from the moment he stepped into that courtroom. You know, Mr. Musk, Judge Belmore began, flipping through the case file like it was a lunch menu. I've always wondered what it's like being the smartest guy in every room. Must be exhausting. A few chuckles echoed through the room. Even some in the jury smiled. Elon, though? He didn't crack. That's assuming I am, he replied flatly. The judge raised an eyebrow. A modest tech titan, what a rare breed. From that moment, it was clear. This wasn't just a courtroom. This was a stage, and Judge Belmore thought he was the headliner. The courtroom's energy shifted. You could feel it. The prosecution, sensing Belmore's tone, leaned into it. Their lead, a brash but clever young attorney named Sutton Crane, opened his arguments with flair. Diagrams, charts, even a short animation showing Musk's alleged breach of contract. The courtroom looked more like a TED Talk than a trial. And then came the laugh. It was during Elon's team's cross-examination. Musk's lawyer, Diana Peltier, was cornering a key witness, an engineer who had supposedly written the disputed code alone. But as she pulled up internal emails, time-stamped, contradictory, and damning, the witness buckled. His answers turned into stammers. A hush fell, until Belmore let out a laugh, loud, dismissive. Oh, come on, the judge said, waving a hand. This is a courtroom, not a conspiracy podcast. The jury blinked. Diana froze. Elon just turned his head slightly, eyes narrowing, and then he did something no one expected. He stood up. Your Honor, he said coolly, may I address the court directly? Diana turned sharply. Elon, she whispered. But Belmore leaned back in his chair, amused. You want to play lawyer now, Mr. Musk? Elon nodded. Just for a moment. It was unorthodox, even risky. But Belmore was enjoying the circus too much to stop it. Be my guest. And that's when it happened. Elon walked calmly to the projector, pulled up a slide, one he hadn't shown his lawyers yet. He clicked once. The screen lit up with a terminal log, a direct extract from a server that matched the startup's database. Date, IP address, commit history, and his name was nowhere near it. But guess whose was? Sutton Crane, the prosecutor. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Sutton stood up, visibly rattled. Objection, he shouted. Irrelevant, inadmissible, and unverified. But Belmore's smile had disappeared. His eyes were now locked on the screen. You hacked our evidence? Sutton barked. Elon turned, completely unbothered. No. I audited the public repository. Your engineer forgot to delete the Git trail. Belmore was silent. Then he leaned forward slowly, his fingers steepled. Mr. Musk, are you suggesting the prosecution fabricated the code trail? I'm not suggesting anything. The logs are in front of you. Check the hashes. And right then, you could feel the temperature drop. The same judge who laughed at Elon Musk just minutes earlier now stared at the evidence with narrowed eyes. His smirk? Gone. The drama? Just getting started. And as Elon walked back to his seat, cool as ever, he said over his shoulder, Sometimes, Your Honor, the smartest guy in the room doesn't have to say a word. But when he does, he usually brings receipts. The courtroom hadn't been this quiet all day. It was the kind of silence that settled into your bones, the kind that tells you something just shifted, permanently. Judge Belmore's smirk from earlier was long gone, replaced by a thin, uncertain line across his face as he adjusted his glasses, glanced at the terminal log Elon had presented, and for the first time, didn't look like he was in control. Court will recess for 15 minutes, he said quickly, standing and practically vanishing behind his chambers without another word. Elon didn't move. He simply sat back down, calm as ever, while his lead attorney Diana Peltier leaned in, whispering with the half-laugh of someone who just saw her client gamble everything. Was that your idea of subtle? Elon didn't reply. He just kept staring at the still-glowing screen where the code logs hovered like quiet witnesses. When the judge returned, something in him had changed. He was composed on the outside, but that earlier confidence gone. "Mr. Crane," he said, now directing his gaze toward the prosecution's table, "I'll need the chain of custody on Exhibit 14, immediately." Sutton Crane, previously smug and sharp, suddenly looked like he was flipping through his notes just to stay afloat. "Yes, Your Honor. I'll get that tomorrow." Some of it was compiled. Externally. Externally. The word hung in the air like a slow leak in a sealed room. Elon raised one eyebrow. Diana folded her arms. The entire courtroom, from the jury to the clerk, seemed to lean forward. But then something strange happened. A new figure slipped into the back of the room, quietly, unnoticed by most. Caroline Levitt, an investigative journalist with a reputation for digging into power plays and corruption at the highest levels. She didn't sit with the other reporters, she sat just 2 rows behind Elon, arms crossed, gaze laser-focused. Elon turned his head slightly, as meeting hers for less than a second. Just a nod. She nodded back. Then came the twist. A bailiff rushed in, whispering something quickly to the clerk, who slid a handwritten note to the judge. Belmore's face went pale. He cleared his throat. "It has come to the court's attention," he began, "that a formal ethics complaint has been filed regarding this case." Sutton blinked. "Filed by who?" Judge Belmore's eyes dropped to the page. "The press," he said flatly. And right then, everything cracked. Gasps. Actual gasps. Phones buzzed. Someone in the gallery whispered, "Oh my God," as reporters began receiving the same headline. Judge Belmore named in judicial corruption complaint, linked to high-stakes tech trial. Caroline Levitt's phone screen glowed bright as she scrolled through the post she'd scheduled to go live just 5 minutes earlier. Wire transfers. Offshore accounts. A retreat in Mexico funded by energy sector billionaires with everything to gain from watching Elon Musk burn in court. And there it was, Belmore's name, signed into a private jet manifest 2 weeks before he was assigned the case. Back in chambers, alone, Belmore stared at a second device. A private inbox. Encrypted. The messages were simple. A photo of him shaking hands with a known corporate lobbyist. A receipt from a Cayman account. And one message at the bottom. "You should have stayed neutral, CL." By late afternoon, Belmore reconvened the court, voice dull, tone drained. "We're calling an off-the-record session. Both parties. Chambers." Now. Inside, he locked the door behind him and looked at Elon, not like a judge, but like a man who'd just been found out. "I was compromised," he said. His voice wasn't booming anymore. It was hollow. "They bought me out months ago. I didn't know it'd be you." Diana looked stunned. "This is a confession." "No," Belmore muttered. "It's a warning. I'm stepping down. You'll get a new judge tomorrow. But if this goes public, if you blow this up, it'll take more than me down." Elon stood slowly. Maybe it should. And with that, he turned and walked out. Past the frozen bailiff. Past the still glowing screen. Past the courtroom full of whispers and turned heads. The judge laughed at had just dismantled the trial from the inside out and made sure the whole world saw it happen. By the time the courtroom opened the next morning, the energy had flipped. The atmosphere wasn't just tense, it was electric. Reporters lined the back wall, eyes glued to their tablets, ready to tweet every eyebrow twitch. The prosecution looked disheveled, like they hadn't slept, and probably hadn't. Sutton Crane's usual slicked-back hair now had a rebellious curl over his forehead, and his tie wasn't even properly knotted. Elon Musk entered without ceremony. No entourage, no drama, just a quiet nod to Diana and a quick scan of the room like he was checking for traps. A new judge now sat at the bench, Judge Marla Espinoza. Known for her sharp mind, no-nonsense courtroom, and reputation for shutting down theatrics before they started, she was not here to play games. "Let's be clear," she said the moment she sat, her voice steady but firm. "I'm here to pick up a case that's already bleeding from the inside. I'm not here to heal it. I'm here to finish it, fairly." She shot a look at both sides. "If either of you tries to drag this into circus territory again, you'll be dealing with me personally." "Understood." Sutton swallowed and nodded. Diana just replied with a quiet, "Yes, Your Honor." And with that, the courtroom got back to business, but not the kind it had been used to. This wasn't the same trial. It couldn't be. The power dynamic had shifted. The prosecution's case was now under a microscope, and the evidence that once seemed untouchable suddenly felt fragile, vulnerable, and very possibly fraudulent. Elon's side moved in quick. Diana motioned to re-examine several documents entered by the prosecution, ones Judge Belmore had previously rubber-stamped without hesitation. This time, Judge Espinoza didn't blink. "If it's relevant to the truth, it comes in. We're not burying anything in this courtroom." Elon watched all of it, hands clasped in front of him, his expression unreadable. But there was something just under the surface now, a focus, almost surgical. Not just a defense strategy. A mission. And then came the moment no one expected. Diana called their next witness, a cybersecurity specialist named Kieran Hale. Not just some analyst for hire. This man had been embedded in the startup that brought the suit against Musk. And more importantly, he was a whistleblower. Mr. Hale, Diana began, can you explain what you discovered while working on the plaintiff's code security audit? Kieran nodded slowly. Yes. I discovered that several segments of the AI code had been ported from an older project, one that was not developed by the plaintiff. Sutton Crane was on his feet instantly. Objection. This is speculation. But before Judge Espinoza could rule, Hale clarified. I didn't speculate. I confirmed. The original developer's name was hard-coded in the metadata. And it wasn't Elon Musk. The judge leaned forward. Are you saying the plaintiff's case is built on intellectual property that doesn't belong to them? Hale nodded. Exactly. Whispers erupted. Reporters scrambled. And Sutton Crane? He froze, his mouth slightly open. He knew right then the floor had just disappeared beneath him. Elon didn't move. Still calm. Still watching. But Diana leaned close and whispered, you think he's going to fold? Elon's reply was simple. No. He's going to panic. And he was right. 10 minutes later, during cross-examination, Sutton Crane made a fatal error. He tried to discredit Hale by referencing confidential internal communications, ones he shouldn't have had access to. Diana caught it immediately. Objection, Your Honor. The prosecution just referenced documents not entered into evidence. We request the source be identified. Judge Espinoza narrowed her eyes. Mr. Crane, where did you obtain those communications? Sutton hesitated. They were sent to us anonymously. Espinoza straightened. By who? Silence. Crane looked cornered. I don't know. That was it. The moment it turned. Espinoza leaned into her mic. This court will recess for 1 hour. During that time, the prosecution is to disclose every off-record document they've received and who accessed them. If that information was improperly obtained, we will be discussing sanctions. Possibly criminal ones. Sutton's face was white. Elon just sat back, relaxed now. The setup was over. The trap had been sprung. The prosecution's case wasn't just falling apart, it was rotting from the inside. And the judge who once mocked him? Gone. Replaced by someone who actually played by the rules. Now the court was his arena, and he wasn't done yet. When court reconvened an hour later, something in the room had shifted again, but this time, it wasn't tension, it was dread. A slow realization spreading across the prosecution's bench that the ground was gone, the mask was off, and the damage control wasn't going to work. Sutton Crane stood there like a man who had just read his own obituary. The anonymous files he tried to reference, they weren't just inadmissible, they were illegally obtained. Diana had called it, and Judge Espinoza wasn't about to let it go. Mr. Crane, she said, voice razor-sharp, you are now ordered to submit a full disclosure to the court and the defense team. If we find a single file obtained outside legal parameters, I will refer this to the state bar. Understood. He didn't speak. Just nodded, pale, his throat visibly swallowing something bitter. Elon remained still at the defense table, one leg crossed calmly over the other, his fingertips pressed together. He didn't look like a man on trial anymore. He looked like someone watching the final domino wobble. And then, just before they could move on, Diana stood and said, Your Honor, we'd like to introduce a final piece of evidence into the record. Something we believe will bring this trial to its proper conclusion. She walked toward the screen again, clicked once, and up came a surveillance still. Black and white. Grainy. But clear. It showed 2 men in a hotel bar in Mexico, Judge Belmore and a corporate lobbyist who sat on the board of the plaintiff's largest investor. The room reacted with shock. Not even whispers, just stunned, breathless silence. Diana turned back to the judge. Taken during the same retreat referenced in the ethics complaint. The lobbyist is Philip Grayson. The timestamps align with the offshore transfers. Judge Espinoza stared at the image for a long moment, then finally looked down at her bench. This court is now in possession of credible evidence suggesting this case was manipulated by parties with a direct conflict of interest. I am ordering an immediate evidentiary review. She paused, then looked right at Sutton. And unless someone wants to start explaining what the hell has been going on in my courtroom, I suggest you lawyer up. That was the moment it truly ended. Sutton Crane sat down slowly, like someone realizing the weight of the cell door swinging shut. The plaintiff's team quietly closed their laptops. No objections, no motion to strike. Just silence. The kind that comes when the truth walks in and shame follows close behind. Elon leaned to Diana and whispered, "Now?" She nodded. He stood. "Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to make a statement." Judge Espinoza raised a brow. "You're not required to." "I know," Elon said. "I want to." He stepped forward slowly, not like a man gloating, but like someone settling a score that never should have been written in ink. "There's this idea that because I'm successful, because I've built things, it makes me arrogant, or reckless, or easy to hate. And that's fine. But what happened in this courtroom wasn't about me. It was about power, people who think they can rig the system quietly enough to get away with it." His eyes moved to Sutton, then back to Espinoza. "I didn't show up here to win. I showed up to make sure they didn't." He stepped back. Silence. Judge Espinoza studied him, then nodded. "Understood. Mr. Musk, you may be seated." 24 hours later, the case was dismissed with prejudice. The prosecution was referred for investigation. And Judge Belmore? He resigned quietly, pressured by ethics boards and legal analysts who now saw him for what he was. But that's not what stuck with people. What stuck was that moment in the courtroom, the man who was laughed at, insulted, underestimated, rising with evidence and precision, dismantling the entire structure with calm, deliberate truth. Elon never celebrated publicly. He never tweeted a word about it. But privately, one of his aides asked if he was going to sue the startup for defamation. He just shook his head. "No need," he said. Their punishment was being wrong in front of the whole world. The judge laughed once. Elon made sure no one would ever forget who laughed last. The headlines were everywhere within hours. Musk vindicated. Judicial scandal exposes legal corruption. Courtroom power play ends in collapse. They weren't just covering the case. They were covering the humiliation. What began as a small patent dispute had detonated into a legal scandal that left a federal judge disgraced, a prosecuting attorney suspended, and a once promising tech startup hemorrhaging credibility. But Elon? He walked away from it like a man stepping through fire with his shirt unburned. The footage of that courtroom moment, when Elon stood and presented the server logs, was replayed on every major outlet. They dubbed it the quiet bombshell. Analysts called it a rare display of restraint and calculation in a world where public figures usually explode first and clarify later. But that wasn't the most surprising part. The most surprising part came a week after the dismissal. Judge Marla Espinoza, the no-nonsense replacement who cleaned up the mess, invited Elon to her chambers not as a defendant, not even as a litigant, but as a citizen. "You could have blown up the system," she told him, "but you chose to let it prove itself. That matters." Elon didn't smile. Just nodded once. "I didn't do it to prove the system works," he said. "I did it to prove some people don't." That quote made its way into a magazine cover story 3 days later. Behind the scenes, things unraveled quickly for the people who tried to corner him. Sutton Crane lost his license pending investigation, and Judge Belmore's financial records became the subject of a federal audit. But Elon didn't touch it. No statements. No lawsuits. No press conference. His silence spoke louder than any headline. And yet, some things did change. Tech executives who had kept their distance suddenly called his office, asking for meetings. Legal scholars wrote articles calling his defense strategy borderline genius. A well-known professor at Stanford even used the case in his curriculum under the unit, When Truth Outperforms Theater. Elon didn't care about any of that, but something small did shift. The next time he stepped into a courtroom, different case, different coast, the judge didn't smirk. He stood when Musk entered. So did the jury. Not because they feared him, but because they understood that underestimating him wasn't just a mistake. It was the mistake. And the waitress story? The one about Judge Belmore laughing at him in open court? It became a kind of urban legend in legal circles. Some versions had Elon hacking the courtroom computer system. Others claimed he had memorized the entire civil code. But the truth was quieter, cleaner, and far more dangerous. He just watched. He just waited. And when the moment was right, he struck with proof. That's what no one expected. And that's what no one forgot. The judge who laughed? He's gone. But the echo? Still in the room.